the perfect, as we know, is the enemy of the good in many of these decisions. And the Master of Divinity, though hardly perfect, is at least a basic degree that says this much at least has been learned, and that's the expectation, or at least taught. And but you mentioned what you do at Trinity and kind of streamlining people into different tracks. We do the same thing with the Biblical and Theological Studies track. But that means that that student who is going to give himself to so much more in terms of exegetical and theological work is basically going to have no electives in a 90-something hour degree. So I think that's the reason why I would encourage students when they enter to go for what you can't get anywhere else. And that's kind of my honest assessment. I want to tell students, look, there's certain things taught here you're going to have a great deal of difficulty learning on your own. And I would say the languages are at the top of that list. And so if I'm thinking of the stewardship of a seminary education, I will tell you, we can't teach everything you're going to need to know, and you will die without knowing everything you need to know. But there are things you can teach yourself and be taught by others by means of things other than classroom experience with a far greater facility than is true of the languages. And so my strong endorsement is take as much as you can, and if you have to leave some other things off as electives, take those later.
Amen and amen.
I think I'd also like to just add, don't look down on interlinears and the various Bible software that help you just read. Because I started reading the Greek New Testament using an interlinear. I mean, I was privileged to be able to do Greek at high school, but the point is when I started reading, you just work through and then you realize what's the most common, what's the most frequent. You get to know that fairly soon. And I'd say with the Greek and Hebrew reading courses, get reading the text straight away. I think that's one of the things BibleMesh does very well, getting you reading text straight away, but not to start doing 10 chapters of grammar before you read the text. So when I teach Hebrew at Cambridge, they do Genesis 1:1 in the first lesson.
I think one of the other things we need to recognize that you just pointed out is that there's really no excuse for not having the tools. I was going to bring my iPad up here. It's out of reach right now. But on various platforms, you now have access to what would previously take rooms in a library. And not only that, when I'm working through these things, I'll be honest, I like books. I like to be surrounded by codices. I like hands on paper. But I find that I get so much more done, just in terms of utility and a lot of the language work, simply by using lexica and other things online that I'm able to do, and even just the physicality of not having to move things around on my desk. All of a sudden it's right there. So I think there's a privileged position we're in we need to recognize in terms of access to so many of these tools. I still want to argue for books. I still think long-term the books will be your friends and companions for a lifelong of ministry. But I do think we need to be thankful for these other things that are giving us enormous tools. And quite honestly, I can't take that library on a plane. But if I have a question and I'm reading the text, I can pull out and quickly check something in terms of the languages in a way that I couldn't when I started in this role 20 years ago.